Government announcing new measures, more restrictions in Ontario, and exemptions for people trying to cross into Canada to visit their loved ones. I'm Chris Hensing. Thanks for joining us. The provincial government implementing stricter public health measures as COVID-19 infections continue to rise. The province reported 732 new cases today. That's up from nearly the 500 that it was yesterday. Premier Doug Ford laid out some of the new restrictions for the province's 3 hotspots.
For Ottawa, Toronto, and Peel Region, effective at 12:01 a.m., restaurants, bars, and nightclubs in Ottawa and Peel must limit their capacity to 100 customers or less. Toronto Public Health has already decided to limit capacity to 75, with no more than 6 people per table, and each customer's contact information must be collected for contact tracing.
Ontario is also making significant changes to its COVID-19 testing procedures. We'll have more on all of those changes coming to the province shortly. We turn now to a drop-off to school that went terribly wrong. It was a morning like any other for a Windsor family. That is until a man intercepted their car and stole it. The CBC's Katerina Georgieva has been on this today. She joins us now live from where it happened. Katerina, how exactly can you walk us through what took place here?
Yeah, Chris, it really was a stunning series of events. It happened right here outside of Giles Campus French Immersion Public School. Louise Ann Charles was dropping off 3 of her grandkids, all between the ages of 8 and 11, to school. And that's when a man who was wearing only underwear intercepted her car. So she slammed the brakes. And what followed, she never could have imagined.
He just stopped in the middle of the road and all of a sudden just became quite belligerent. Jumped on the hood of the car, started to use his head and shoulders, bashing the windshield. And I said, oh my goodness, what do I do? Of course, I'm a praying lady, so I started praying. And, you know, it was impressed upon my heart to let the children out. So, because I had already his attention, so they're in the back seat. So I said, go children, run. And they were already yelling from in the car, so they ran yelling. And I still had his attention. He bashed it about 4 times. It was smashed coming in on me. His nose was bloody and all of that. So I said, okay, now what do? I came out of the car. Oh boy. And he started to come at me. So I'm evading him, of course. And for some reason, his mind turned to the car itself again, and he upped in, and away he went. By that time, I will also the people behind me. They were out of their cars. They were ready to come to my defense. It was such a community, or should I say, whoever were there. They really helped. One even asked that I could come into the car. I said, I have to see my babies. I don't know where. I have to see that they've arrived. And oh my goodness, the teachers sent them home. They were too traumatized because when they had to run and leave Nana, they want their Nana, they want the Nana, this man is going to kill Nana. So it was very, very traumatic for them. Last night I woke up and I was saying, whew, you know, I was having a little bit of a palpitation, so to speak. But yes, but you know, I am still at peace, and I'm just, as I said before, I can't express my gratitude enough for everyone who has helped.
So, Chris, you heard Charles say there that the man fled with her vehicle, and police say that it was reported that the man was actually driving in the wrong direction along multiple streets in our city. He was also involved in a single vehicle collision, and he was actually arrested shortly thereafter, and he was taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. And since then, he has been charged with robbery and dangerous driving.
Wow. Just listening to the calm in her voice as she described what she went through, some quick action by people around her. But all of this happening early in the morning, as you said, many parents dropping their kids off at that time. How's the school and the school board responding to this?
Right, so both the school and the school board declined an interview when I asked for one, but the board did tell me that they've made psychological and social work staff available to any students or staff members who might need to talk about this. And a mental health educator tells me that that was an excellent response from the school and from the board. She says this is a really great opportunity for parents to have conversations with their kids, especially if they witnessed what happened.
We want to talk to our children and let them know like that was a very isolated incident. It doesn't happen that often. And when we do see someone who is perhaps acting in a way that is threatening, we have to be mindful that perhaps like that individual's perception is not to cause harm. And I know that's hard to say out loud, but it truly isn't. That individual wasn't there to cause harm. He was in distress.
Yeah, and she says it's always scary when you are witnessing somebody in distress, but you can always take a step back, call 911 and just remember to approach these kinds of situations with kindness and compassion, because it's likely that this person just needs some help. And Chris, I really want to mention that Charles echoed that as well. She says she understands that the person in her incident likely wasn't being themselves in that moment, and she really does just wish him well. Chris.
Thanks, Ms. Katerina. The CBC's Katerina Georgieva live tonight. It's a record that no one wanted to see. Ontario reporting 732 new cases of COVID-19 today. A ballooning backlog in tests for the disease goes with it. In response, the Premier announcing new measures to get a handle on the situation. Our Queen's Park reporter, Mike Crawley, has more of the coming changes.
The buzz from Queen's Park this morning had Premier Doug Ford making a major announcement at his daily briefing on COVID-19. Flanked by more advisors than usual, Ford begins with a somber tone.
As Premier, it's my duty to protect the people.
Yet the new measures Ford announces prove far less sweeping than what many public health experts are demanding. Indoor mask rules, already in place in much of the province, are extended to all of Ontario. Toronto and other hotspots get a few extra restrictions.
Restaurants, bars, and nightclubs in Ottawa and Peel must limit their capacity to 100 customers or less.
But that's actually higher than the restaurant capacity limit already imposed in Toronto. This comes as Ontario surpasses its single-day record for new cases of COVID-19, and the 7-day average keeps soaring upward. Social contact is considered a big driver of the surge in infections. The province is asking people to pare that back. But does it mean don't go see your folks at Thanksgiving? The tag team answer is far from clear.
I'll pass that over to the Minister of Health. What we're saying is keep the social circles tight.
We want people to keep their gatherings small, but I think I'll refer this to Dr. Heyer or Dr. Williams.
I think everybody has to think carefully about where they're going to and what they're doing and assess the potential risk, assess the potential chance for transmission.
We want to say smaller. You have to refocus back down because we said 10, but people with 10, another 10 and 20, 30, and they just went open on that, and we have a problem now.
The Premier translates.
I think what he's saying is just keep your circles tight now. That's what I think he's getting at.
Here's what the government's news release says. Have close contact only with the people in your household. With everyone else, keep 2 meters away. The government was considering shifting Ontario to a new color-coded system for the risk from COVID-19. Regions would be declared as red zones or orange, yellow, or green with restrictions to match. But Premier Ford shot down the idea, saying it would be too confusing. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
Ottawa also making some big announcements today having to do with the border policies, but also the isolation center here in Windsor for migrant workers. The Minister of Public Safety, Bill Blair, tweeted out this morning confirming that they will support the Isolation and Recovery Centre in Windsor, Essex. It's a program designed for migrant workers. I spoke with Windsor-Tecumseh MP Eric Kuzmarczyk just before our show, asking him about this update, but also what kind of changes are coming for people trying to cross the border to meet family here in Canada. Thanks for joining us. A lot on the plate in Ottawa that affects people here in Windsor, Essex. I want to start with the Isolation and Recovery Centre. The city and the province both writing to the federal government asking for financial support. Where does that sit today?
Well, today we got some good news, and where the Minister Bill Blair, Public Safety Minister, announced that the Canadian Red Cross will be extending its support to the Isolation and Recovery Center that is being run now by the City of Windsor in order to help isolate and help recover migrant workers. And this is just another example of the tremendous collaboration and teamwork that we're seeing across all levels of government.
Something else that's happened today that will affect a lot of people in Windsor, Essex, those new measures about the border. It's going to allow more people to be reunited with family in Canada, but also there's more on the enforcement side there. What changes can people expect to see?
Well, today was a day, Chris, that many Canadians and many constituents have been waiting for and fighting for months now. And that announcement basically extended family reunification. So expanded the number of folks or the folks that would be allowed to rejoin their loved ones across the border here. And we've also made provisions to allow for exceptions to the quarantine rule for compassionate reasons. And so you recall the last couple of weeks, we were really inspired by the story of the Costello family that wanted to reunite before Ms. Costello passed away. And we fought very hard. We worked very hard to get that exception for the Costello family, but we knew that more needed to be done. We knew that we couldn't just have a single exception. We wanted to extend those compassionate exceptions to more Canadians that are in the same situation, to allow them to reunite in moments of crisis, in moments of difficulty, so that they can spend time together, and that they could also reunite during these difficult COVID times as well. We know that how critical family and being around loved ones is for Canadians and constituents.
Now, Canadians have been watching closely how the United States has handled this crisis. It's also an election year. What exactly is it going to take for that border to reopen? Do you have a timeline of any sorts?
I don't believe that there's any interest on our part anytime soon to reopen the border. The fact that we've kept our numbers low, very much relative to the United States, what we're seeing in the U.S., is a testament to the fact that our border policies are correct. And the announcement today really just demonstrates that the types of solutions that this government has been offering through the COVID crisis, which is solutions that are first and foremost responsible, but that are solutions that are also compassionate as well. And so it falls in line with the types of solutions and programs and policies this government has been enacting. And again, the proof is in the pudding. We see what's happening in the U.S., and we know that the border policies we've had in place are working.
Now, for more specific details on what exactly is changing, you can see those rules on our website, cbc.ca/Windsor, and that will start to take effect next week. The local health unit reported a spike in absenteeism within the region this week, and they're not sure why. Some suspect that it could be due to the previous screening guidelines issued by the province, which was updated today. This all has to do with the schools in our community. The CBC's Tamina Aziz reports.
This week, we did find the absenteeism a little bit higher.
This daycare center is emptier than usual. The supervisor says it's normal for kids to have a runny nose during this time of year, but says that's what caused kids to stay home this week as parents adhere to the province's old guidelines.
Some of the children that we have had over the years whose absenteeism have been wonderful and they're usually not absent, had been absent, and that due to the COVID guideline for excluding children due to having a runny nose or a cough.
The updated screening tool is shorter and more detailed than before. The public school board says this will be helpful for parents and staff, and it's very clear on when students should stay home.
The only concern that we had about the previous guidelines is it wasn't specific enough in us to understand what is new, what is worsening, and what is chronic. I think what parents are doing are keeping kids home when there's any kind of symptom because we want to be safe. We can't assume it's COVID, but we can assume it's not COVID.
Students are no longer required to get tested for COVID if they have a runny nose, headache, sore throat, fatigue, or diarrhea. Now they just have to go home for 24 hours and return if they feel well enough to do so. Cooner is still working through the new updates, but expects to see more kids in her center with the new guideline. Tamina Aziz, CBC News, Windsor.
U.S. President Donald Trump has been taken to a military hospital. This after he and his wife Melania tested positive for COVID-19. His doctor says that Trump, quote, remains fatigued. The president will remain in hospital for the next few days, dealing with what are being described as mild symptoms. Members of his administration are rallying around the first couple.
We're praying for the president and the first lady, that they'll have a speedy recovery. I spoke with the vice president's office this morning as well. We're taking this obviously very seriously.
Trump and Melania were tested for the virus after a close aide, Hope Hicks, tested positive yesterday. She'd flown with the president twice this week. Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden has tested negative. Now, the wait on the results of that test delayed his plans to visit Michigan today by a couple hours. He did make it to Grand Rapids this afternoon to talk about the economy, but started with his push to make sure Americans have access to COVID tests.
The seriousness of this virus also underscores that we need regular testing with results turned around rapidly and that's available to everyone. It's not just the folks in the White House or who travel with me that deserve regular testing.
A familiar face for folks in Windsor, Essex joins season 2 of the CBC documentary series, You Can't Ask That. More next. And joining us now for a live look at the weather is Colette Kennedy. Colette, that forecast, I think we're going to need the bigger blankets tonight. Those are coming out of the closet, eh?
Yes, it is that time of year where you start to pull those things out. We need a few more layers. You know, not a bad day today, sky condition wise, but a little blustery at times with those northwesterly winds gusting at times 40, 45 kilometers an hour. So had to contend with that. Our average high this time of year, yeah, it's still 19, and today's high unofficially was definitely on the cooler side. And our average low, yeah, we were on the cooler side with that too, but 5 this morning, it's actually going even lower tonight, and we're going to get to that in just a moment. This is what the current temperatures are looking like, so we're still holding on to double digits at this hour, but as the sun sets, that's going to be dropping too very, very quickly. Just taking a look at some of the shower activity, it's still kind of spotty in nature, but that's off to the east of us right now. But you still can see that rotation, that counterclockwise rotation with that sort of trough that's still lingering behind that front there. Now, as we go through the overnight hours, we're going to see kind of some clearing, but then what happens through the day, not bad on Saturday, but by the time we get to Sunday, we get into this more widespread precipitation coming back at us. And that's why of the 2 days of the weekend, the better day is definitely going to be Saturday. So if you are going to take in again some of the foliage and enjoy some of the colors and that sort of thing, your better bet for it is going to be Saturday, or any kind of outdoor activities that you want to get into, because Sunday's looking like we're going to see some wetter conditions. All right, I said I was going to get to the numbers. This is what we're looking at, lows of 2 and 3 degrees. So although the frost advisories are well off towards the east and northeast in Ontario, I do want to tell you that there's going to be some areas where we're going to see a little bit of patchy frost developing. So be aware of that. And if you do have any plants that you still want to kind of protect, that's something to think of. Pretty day tomorrow. It's just that the temperatures are running about 5 degrees below seasonal for those daytime highs. The wet conditions Sunday, and then looking ahead towards next week is when we're going to see those temps coming back up for us, Chris.
Perfect. Thanks for this, Colette.
You're welcome.
Now, coming up next, there has been a name change at Point Pelee National Park. We'll tell you all about it. The hospital says this area is well prepared for any coming surge in COVID-19 cases.
We never really had a break from COVID. If you recall, back in July and August, when other parts of the province had very low COVID numbers and they were moving immediately into stage 2 and the stage 3, we were behind because we had COVID positive numbers, we had hospitalizations, we still had patients in critical care to pretty large numbers. I think because of that, we're stronger in the sense that we haven't rested.
But he also told the board yesterday that the area must stay vigilant or we will see a rise in hospitalizations and fatalities. He says the COVID crisis did delay the construction of the new mega hospital, but that it's also proved that a new hospital is needed here. The University of Windsor wants public input into the possible renaming of a residence building named after Canada's first Prime Minister.
What we now realize is that the suppression and exploitation of Indigenous people was not just a side story in Canadian history, it's a main story in Canadian history.
A newly formed committee came together after a petition circulated demanding the name change. Sir John A. Macdonald was known for his support of the residential school system, where many Indigenous students were emotionally, physically, and sexually abused. There's a new sign at Point Pelee National Park.
Pioneer has been renamed Madbinjina. It's very important for us in this process of reconciliation with Canada and with Parks Canada. To have our traditional language and our traditional territory recognized in Anishinaabe.
Now, the term translates to sit a while. Members of the Caldwell First Nation use the area for community events and ceremonies. Van Orscott says it's important for the land to be acknowledged, sharing with visitors to the area what true history is and understand the presence of Indigenous people in the region before colonization. The CBC documentary series You Can't Ask That launches a new season today. Each episode asks a group of different Canadians with disabilities to respond honestly to awkward, inappropriate, or uncomfortable questions that they hear all the time. One of the people featured is from our own backyard, a town councillor in LaSalle who previously served as a Windsor police officer and Army reservist in Afghanistan.
The tape in my head of these incidents plays over and over and over again. June 27th, 2006 at 12:08 in the morning. It was fireworks night. I go by another officer that's holding an IV bag, and there's a small child laying on the ground bleeding. This child had been stabbed about 22 or some odd times. Unfortunately, despite the best efforts of everyone involved, the child died.
What are the voices saying to you?
Do you have a split personality?
Will you end up in a wheelchair? I describe post-traumatic stress like this. It is a normal reaction to an abnormal event.
So the longer you do these types of jobs, nursing, firefighter, police, the more you're exposed to the dark underbelly of society. I have friends that will not talk about some of their experiences. They choose not to share, and that's their prerogative, and that's how they cope. But being a talker, even sitting here now and sharing it with you, I am lightening my load, and it's being more equally distributed. There's still dates and times and smells in my head that take me back to Afghanistan or back to calls and policing, and I wouldn't have changed my life at all. I would not have wanted to not have the privilege of wearing these uniforms. I would be a different person, and I'm happy where I'm at right now.
You can hear more of his story in Season 2 of the CBC documentary series You Can't Ask That. All of those episodes available starting today on CBC Gem. It's a free service. Those episodes will also be airing on CBC Television. The one with the LaSalle cancer in it, Akpata, is October 16th. And it is 6:29 p.m. That's it for us here at CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. We're on social media too. You can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Power in Politics is up next. We're going to join that already in progress. Thanks for watching. Make sure that you and your family stay safe, stay warm this weekend.